Hey guys, welcome back to the latest episode of the Withstand podcast. I hope you're doing well and I hope you're keeping your eyes on Jesus, because at the moment there's so many things competing for our attention and drawing our eyes away from Him. So it's becoming harder and harder to wrestle our attention back to Him. But I encourage you guys, and of course encourage myself, to continue to do it. Keep fighting the good fight in that respect. Because the world's losing its tiny mind, and the only blessed hope we have is through Jesus Christ. So I pray that you're keeping your eyes on Him at the moment. Now we are in the book of Leviticus today, and we are up to chapter 7, and this is God's word.
Likewise, this is the law of the trespass offering. It is most holy. In the place where they kill the burnt offering, they shall kill the trespass offering, and its blood he shall sprinkle all around on the altar. And he shall offer from it all its fat, the fat tail and the fat that covers the entrails, the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them by the flanks. And the fatty lobe attached to the liver above the kidneys he shall remove, and the priest shall burn them on the altar as an offering made by fire to the Lord. It is a trespass offering. Every male among the priests may eat it. It shall be eaten in a holy place. It is most holy. The trespass offering is like the sin offering. There is one law for them both. The priest who makes atonement with it shall have it, and the priest who offers anyone's burnt offering, that priest shall have for himself the skin of the burnt offering, which he has offered. Also every grain offering that is baked in the oven, and all that is prepared in the covered pan, or in a pan, shall be the priest who offers it. Every grain offering, whether mixed with oil or dry, shall belong to all the sons of Aaron, to one as much as the other. This is the law of the sacrifice of peace offerings, which he shall offer to the Lord. If he offers it for a thanksgiving, then he shall offer with the sacrifice of thanksgiving unleavened cakes mixed with oil, unleavened wafers anointed with oil, or cakes of blended flour mixed with oil. Besides the cakes as his offering, he shall offer leavened bread with his sacrifice of thanksgiving of his peace offering. And from it he shall offer 1 cake from each offering as a heave offering to the Lord. It shall belong to the priest who sprinkles the blood of the peace offering. The flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering for thanksgiving shall be eaten the same day it is offered. He shall not leave any of it until morning. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow or a voluntary offering, it shall be eaten the same day that he offers his sacrifice. But on the next day the remainder of it also may be eaten. The remainder of the flesh of the sacrifice on the 3rd day must be burnt with fire. And if any of the flesh of the sacrifice of his peace offering is eaten at all on the 3rd day, it shall not be accepted, nor shall it be imputed to him. It shall be an abomination to him who offers it, and the person who eats of it shall bear guilt. The flesh that touches any unclean thing shall not be eaten, it shall be burned with fire. And as for the clean flesh, all who are clean may eat of it. But the person who eats the flesh of the sacrifice of the peace offering that belongs to the Lord, while he is unclean, that person shall be cut off from his people. Moreover, the person who touches any unclean thing, such as human uncleanness, an unclean animal, or any abominable unclean thing, and who eats the flesh of the sacrifice of the peace offering that belongs to the Lord, that person shall be cut off from his people. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, You shall not eat any fat of ox or sheep or goat, and the fat of an animal that dies naturally, and the fat of what is torn by wild beasts may be used in any other way, but you shall by no means eat. For whoever eats the fat of the animal of which men offer an offering made by fire to the Lord, the person who eats it shall be cut off from his people. Moreover, you shall not eat any blood in any of your dwellings, whether of bird or beast. Whoever eats any blood, that person shall be cut off from his people. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, He who offers a sacrifice of his peace offering to the Lord shall bring his offering to the Lord from the sacrifice of his peace offering. His own hands shall bring the offerings made by fire to the Lord. The fat with the breast he shall bring, that the breast may be waved as a wave offering before the Lord. And the priest shall burn the fat on the altar, but the breast shall be Aaron's and his sons'. Also the right thigh you shall give to the priest as a heave offering from the sacrifices of your peace offerings. He among the sons of Aaron, who offers the blood of the peace offering and the fat, shall have the right thigh for his part. For the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of the heave offering I have taken from the children of Israel, from the sacrifices of their peace offerings, and I have given them to Aaron, the priest, and to his sons from the children of Israel by a statute forever. This is the consecrated portion for Aaron and his sons, from the offerings made by fire to the Lord, on the day when Moses presented them to minister to the Lord as priests. The Lord commanded this to be given to them by the children of Israel on the day that he anointed them, by a statute forever throughout their generations. This is the law of the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the trespass offering, the consecrations, and the sacrifice of the peace offering, which the Lord commanded Moses on Mount Sinai, on the day when he commanded the children of Israel to offer their offerings to the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai. This is the word of the Lord.
And this is what Tom Constable writes, starting with the law of the guilt offering for the priests. The chapter division is misleading. This pericope, or selection of text, continues the revelation of God's will for the priests, this time when they offered a guilt offering. The guilt offering, as well as the grain and sin offerings, were to be considered most holy after they were offered. The priests were to sacrifice the guilt offerings at the same place they sacrificed the burnt offerings, at the doorway of the tent of meeting. In both of these offerings they were to sprinkle some of the sacrificial animal's blood on the brazen altar. Then the priest was to burn up its fat, kidneys, and the lobe of its liver on the altar. The priest burned only the fatty parts on the altar, that is, the fat that was in a detached state, rather than mixed with the muscles. They were permitted to eat the meat of the guilt offerings. Here God specified what portions of this offering and the other offerings the priest could eat in a holy place. The priest's portion from the sin and guilt offerings was the same, part of the sacrificial animal that had its blood drained out. The priest's portion from the burnt offering was a hide or skin of the animal. The priest's portion of the grain offering was all but the handful that was burnt up on the altar. Instructions regarding the priest's portion of the peace offering will follow in the larger section of directions concerning that offering. Probably there is more legislation specified for the offering of the peace offering than for the others, because the Israelites participated more in this sacrifice than in the others. This is the only offering that ordinary Israelites could eat, but the priests also ate part of it. Consequently, this pericope contains general regulations governing the consumption of meat. This is a topic sentence that introduces all the revelation that will follow through verse 36. The Hebrew word todah means confession or acknowledgement, so the thanksgiving in view is in acknowledgement of gratitude to Yahweh for some particular deliverance that the Israelite had experienced from him. When an Israelite wanted to thank the Lord for delivering him from some bad situation, he was to bring a regular peace offering, but he was to add to it 3 other offerings: unleavened cakes or loaves mixed with oil, unleavened wafers smeared with oil, and cakes of fine flour well mixed with oil. In addition, he was to offer cakes of leavened bread. This is unusual, since normally leaven was excluded from the offerings. Since leaven often symbolized sin, leaven was not normally permitted to be offered to God, but here the leaven seems to represent the offer who was characterized by sin. The leavened cakes intimate the corruption of the offerer. Thus this offering expressed fellowship between the sinful offerer, whom Yahweh had delivered from some bad situation, and his holy God. The Israelite would then present his offerings to the Lord. They would then become the property of the priest who paved the way for this offering by sprinkling the blood of the sacrificial animal on the altar. The meat of this thanksgiving peace offering was to be eaten on the day of the offering. This command was probably intended to help the offerer view his offering as something special, not just as food to be eaten normally. Here 2 other special peace offerings come into view. A votive peace offering was offered with an Israelite completed a vow that he made to God. These offerings often celebrated an answer to prayer. The voluntary or free will offering was offered when the offerer voluntarily and freely brought the peace offering for no other reason than his love for the Lord. These types of offerings were to be eaten on the day they were offered or on the next day. The reason may have been because these offerings were more pleasing to the Lord, so he allowed the offerer to celebrate longer. The thanksgiving gift represented the donor's acknowledgement of God's mercies to him, while the votive comprised an offering in fulfillment of a vow. The free will offering consisted of an act of homage and obedience to the Lord where no vow has been made, and with the other categories of well-being sacrifices lent substance to the conviction in Israel that God valued a tangible response to his blessings, more than a mere verbal profession of gratitude, which might or might not be sincere. Any remnants of the food of these offerings that remained to the third day were to be burned up. Yahweh would not accept this offering if the offerer ate any of the leftover meat on the third day, and he would punish the offerer if he did. What this punishment would be is unspecified. Not only was the meat that was left over on the third day ritually unclean, but meat that touched anything unclean was unclean, and was not to be eaten. Meat that had not touched something unclean could be eaten by any Israelite who was clean. Ritual uncleanness was not the same as physical or spiritual uncleanness. Ritual uncleanness was a condition in the life of the Israelites that rendered them unfit to participate in tabernacle worship. It was how Yahweh viewed them if and when they violated his will. When applied to animals and objects, ritual uncleanness was a condition that rendered them unfit, through no fault of their own, to enter God's presence. The rationale behind ritual uncleanness, why something was placed in this category, is not always clear, but contact with sin or a symbolic connection with sin seems to be at the root of most ritual uncleanness. An unclean person who ate meat from the peace offering, which belongs to the Lord, was to be cut off from his people. As explained elsewhere, see my comments on Genesis chapter 17 and Exodus 12, this phrase sometimes appears to refer to being excommunicated from the camp of Israel or having one's line eventually cut off, and at other times it seems to refer to being put to death, either by the people or by the Lord. In this context, it is difficult to tell what was intended, but a severe penalty is clearly in view. This is the first occurrence of the karet penalty in Leviticus. It is the penalty associated with a breach of the covenant, yet how it was practically executed is not mentioned. While it is sometimes related to the death penalty, the presence of the karet penalty without mention of death leaves room for the supposition that it is something other than the death penalty. Thus, the reference to individuals or individual groups may suggest that as a penalty he is to be cut off from every member of the people to whom he belongs, not to mention from the covenantal community as a whole. He becomes absolutely isolated, cut off from any humans he may have recourse to in time of need. Thus, his penalty is virtually no different for the offender from the death penalty. But the danger of uncleanness went further. Any person who touched anything unclean was forbidden from eating the peace offering on penalty of being cut off. One writer summarized the lessons of chapter 7 as follows. Believers are to celebrate their peace with God. Those at peace with God should express material and public gratitude for divine assistance. Gratitude demands a generous material response. Gratitude must be directed to God. Gratitude needs to be expressed in a group. Those at peace with God may obligate themselves to undertake acts of tribute to God. Those at peace with God want to perform free acts of homage in appreciation to God. Maintaining peace with God is to be taken very seriously. Celebration of being at peace with God requires the generosity and purity of those who share the common meal. Then the Lord spoke to Moses indicates another shift in emphasis, in contrast to the preceding paragraphs. God told Moses to tell all the Israelites something, not just the priests. What follows is further instruction regarding the fat and the blood of the peace offering animals. The people were not to eat any of the fat of the animals that they brought for peace offerings, nor were they to eat the fat of animals that died naturally, or the fat of animals that died because they had been wounded by another animal and then died. The objection may be raised that animal suet is inedible. Still, it must never be forgotten that biblical suet, or otherwise known as heleb, also comprises certain edible portions, and that suet was used in the preparation of food. There may have also been a hygienic reason for God's prohibiting of the eating of animal fat. Animal fats eaten consistently in significant amounts over a lengthy period of time can raise the cholesterol level already present in the blood, and especially in conjunction with hypertension can result in such conditions as arteriosclerosis and atherosclerosis, both of which cause circulatory accidents. Had the eating of animal fat and suet, the hard white fat on the kidneys and loin of cattle, sheep and other animals, been permitted, such an imbalance of cholesterol might well have been precipitated among the Hebrews, since they were already ingesting such saturated fats as butter and cheese. But by restricting the intake of potentially damaging fats, the circulatory system would be enabled to maintain a reasonable blood cholesterol level and allow the factor known as high-density lipoprotein to protect the arteries and the heart against disease. Some modern cancer researchers also maintain that a diet high in saturated fats can lead to mammary gland and colon cancer in those who are constitutionally predisposed. The penalty for violating this law was to be cut off from the Israelites. This prohibition highlighted the importance of the fat as a symbol of the best part of the animal that was to be offered to Yahweh in the peace offering. Likewise, the people were never to eat the blood of any animal or bird at any time. The blood, of course, represented life poured out, and it had special significance because of the blood that was applied on the door frames when the Israelites left Egypt. It represented an atoning sacrifice. The penalty of this offence was the same: to be cut off. In spite of the strictness of the prohibition, the eating of meat with the blood still in it occurred repeatedly in Israel. This was related to the idea, also found elsewhere in the ancient Near Eastern world, that the consumption of blood fortifies life or leads to ecstasy and communion with the deity. Obviously, whenever anyone eats meat, it is inevitable that he eats some of the blood in the meat, but prohibitions about eating blood refer to eating the blood alone. Blood has long been recognized as the life force in a body. As such, it has been thought that to eat blood in its coagulated form or to drink blood in its liquid form was to gain power. This is why eating and or drinking blood was and still is in some cultures practiced. Yeah, and unfortunately we know a little bit too much about that. And that is an episode and a half for another day. He continues, Moses received another law that he was to communicate to all the Israelites. These instructions seem redundant, but they have been repeated so that the offerer would be impressed with the fact that he himself should bring the offering and that he should remember that it was an offering to the Lord and not just an opportunity for him to eat meat. It may be that the only time the Israelites ate meat was when they brought a peace offering to Yahweh, since their animals were valuable possessions. Along with the fat, the offerer was to be careful to also offer the breast of his sacrificial animal, which was the best meat. He was to wave the breast before the Lord as part of the ritual of making his peace offering. The wave or elevation or presentation offering was not waved from side to side, but toward the altar and away from it. The wave offering was one way in which the priest and the offerer presented his best to the Lord. The priest laid the object to be waved upon the hands of the offerer and then placed his own hands underneath and moved the hands of the offerer backwards and forwards in a horizontal direction to indicate by the movement forwards, that is, in the direction towards the altar, the presentation of the sacrifice or the symbolical transference of it to God, and by the movement backwards, the reception of it back again as a present which God handed over to his servants, the priests. This procedure may have been intended to symbolize the ambiguity that the offerer felt as he parted with the best part of his sacrificial animal. The fat was to be burned up on the altar, but the breast was to be given to the priest. Likewise, the right thigh, or the hind quarter, another choice piece, was to be the priest's portion of this offering. The priest who offered this sacrifice was to receive the right thigh. It went directly to him, in contrast to the breast, which was first waved back and forth before the Lord. According to traditional Jewish exegesis, contribution or heaving was effected by a vertical up and down action, whereas dedication, waving, was done with a sideways action. The fact that the right thigh was given directly to the priest may have symbolized the resolution or determination of the offerer to give his best to Yahweh. The priest's portion of the peace offering was the Lord's gift to them from the day of their official appointment as priests, as long as the Israelites offered this offering forever. In our obligations to give our best to God, we must recognize that a portion of our giving belongs to those who minister. Jesus Christ terminated the Mosaic law, including its dietary restrictions, by declaring all foods clean. He meant that from then on, diet would have nothing to do with one's relationship with God, as it did under the Mosaic law. He did not mean that the potentially harmful results of eating certain foods would cease. As Christians, our relationship with God is unaffected by the foods we choose to eat. However, God's dietary guidelines for the Israelites can help us identify foods that for physical reasons may be wise to avoid. Some of the dietary restrictions of the Mosaic law express God's concern for his people's physical welfare in addition to their spiritual welfare. This section of Leviticus that deals with instructions for the priests concerning the offerings closes with a summary. This is a common feature of Leviticus. Mention is made too of the ordination offering, which was a peace offering just referred to on the day that he anointed them. The reference to God giving these laws to Moses on Mount Sinai may seem to contradict chapter 1, which says that the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. But since the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, was located at Mount Sinai, these are probably synonymous references. God spoke to Moses specifically from the tent of meeting, which was on Mount Sinai. The sacrificial law, therefore, with the 5 species of sacrifices which it enjoins, embraces every aspect in which Israel was to manifest its true relation to the Lord its God, whilst the sanctification of the whole man in self-surrender to the Lord was shadowed forth in the burnt offerings. The fruits of the sanctification in the meat offerings and the blessedness of the possession and enjoyment of saving grace in the peace offerings, the expiatory sacrifices furnished the means of removing the barrier which sins and trespasses had set up between the sinner and the holy God, and procured the forgiveness of sin and guilt, so that the sinner could attain one more to the unrestricted enjoyment of the covenant grace. I think that sentence had about 83 words in it, so apologies if the intonation was incorrect. He goes on. Jesus said that God must be worshipped in spirit and in truth, and it has become commonplace to contrast spirit and form as if they were incompatible in worship. The letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life is a text that, out of context, can be used to justify slapdash leading of services and other Christian activities. Spontaneity and lack of preparation is equated with spirituality. Leviticus 6 denies this. Care and attention to detail are indispensable to the conduct of divine worship. God is more important, more distinguished, worthy of more respect than any man. Therefore, we should allow his injunctions to the letter if we respect him. The New Testament later revealed that all the Israelite sacrifices and priesthood pointed to Jesus Christ's sacrifice and priesthood. Worthy subjects of further study in connection with the 5 offerings are how Jesus Christ fulfilled each one and what we can learn about our worships of God from these offerings. See the scriptural cross-references on the pages of these notes dealing with chapters 1 through 7 for a start. It need scarcely be said that everything connected with the priesthood was intended to be symbolical and typical, the office itself, its functions, even its dress and outward support. The fundamental ideas which underlay all and connected it into a harmonious whole were reconciliation and mediation, the one expressed by typically atoning sacrifices, the other by a typically intervening priesthood. But there was yet another idea to be expressed by the priesthood. The object of reconciliation was holiness. And I'll leave a link to these notes for you in the show notes, guys. Now, guys, if you made it this far into the episode, you are a saint, because today has been littered with stops and starts and terrible production values, and even my own reading ability has been a little bit questionable today. So I'm so thankful if you've made it this far, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. In today's Bible verse, we learnt that so many of the Israelites were surrendering sacrifices and offering them up to the Lord as a form of worship. So today's daily devotion from Dr. Charles Stanley is titled Surrender All. It's based on Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 5. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Dr. Stanley writes, "Often we have no problem defining something, but describing how to accomplish it is another matter. Take surrender, for example. How would you explain all it signifies? Well, in the Christian life, it really means the complete transfer of the undivided possession, control, and use of your total being, spirit, soul, and body to the Lord Jesus Christ, to whom you rightfully belong by right of creation and redemption. First, it must be a deliberate act on your part. Just as an engaged couple start their commitment to each other by taking marital vows, you need to be intentional in your singular and wholehearted devotion to Jesus. Second, it must be voluntary. No one can force you to serve God or act as your proxy. It must be a personal choice. Third, it is final. In the Lord's eyes, when you commit to Him, the transaction is complete once and for all. And because growth always plays a part, surrender is a progression. It is a continuing act whereby you turn ever more over to Him as you mature. So today, consider, has your commitment to Jesus deepened over the time you've known Him? Have you surrendered all to Him? And he prays, Jesus, I surrender all to you deliberately, voluntarily, finally, and progressively. Amen. Guys, thank you for sticking around to the end. God bless each and every one of you. Until next time, Maranatha.